Jean-Paul Sartre was a French existentialist philosopher. Now, you might want to ask, what is an existentialist philosopher, or what is existentialism? And for that, we have to understand two things. One is essentialism, and second is existentialism. Essentialism, it comes from essence, and existentialism obviously talks about the existence. Now, many philosophers going back to the ancient Greece, they believed that essence, it precedes existence. Now, what does that mean? It means that the purpose or function of anything in the world, it precedes its existence. So everything has a function, has an essence. For example, a knife has a purpose, that is to cut certain objects. Similarly, whatever is created around us, whether it's man-made or natural, it has some purpose, it serves some purpose, and that is why its essence precedes its existence. But existentialist philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, they argue the opposite. They say that existence, it precedes the essence. What does that mean? It means that we are here first, and then we are free agents as human beings, and then we discover or find our purpose. And we may not find it at all, which is fine, but it is we who create this purpose. And according to Sartre, this is what differentiates us human beings from almost everything else on the planet. That we have this free will, and we are these free agents who can create their own destinies, provided we have the courage to do so. Now, if I talk about his books, one book that particularly stands out from the rest in terms of philosophy is Being and Nothingness. The title might sound a bit like Being and Time, which was a book by Heidegger, and it's not a coincidence at all. Sartre was a reader and in some ways a student of Heidegger. There are a number of other non-fiction works such as Existence is Humanism, and even some collection of his works. But you can also explore some of his novels where you find similar themes of existentialism and absurdity of life. And it's really interesting how Sartre brings all that together. So, going back to the basic ideas of free will and how that affects our lives, Sartre feels that the free will, we are kind of destined to have free will, and in his words, we are condemned to have, because he doesn't see it as a privilege, rather he sees it as a great burden, great responsibility to have a free will. That is, we write our own destinies, and it's a great pain, great task to do that. And most people don't have that courage. And to illustrate this point, it talks about this concept called bad faith, where people deceive themselves that they don't have free will, or they don't have the right circumstances, right situation, and therefore by following that bad faith, they kind of avoid that path of living a free life. So he gives a couple of examples to make this point. So one example is about a man flirting with a woman in a bar. And Sartre points out that the woman might be thinking that the man is flirting for her behavior, for her own persona, the kind of platonic love that we talk about. But instead, it could just be sexual in nature, but she doesn't want to see the reality. And similarly, when the woman is responding to his flirtatiousness, the man might be thinking that she is responding sexually when she might be having some other ideas. So we convince ourselves, we deceive ourselves by making certain romantic notions in our head when reality is something else. Similarly, he gives another example of a waiter who is carrying on in his duty and following all the orders, but he can be doing anything. He can be anywhere, but he's still stuck there making some kind of stories in his head that is stuck here because of money, because of all the reasons. And he's not going to taste the freedom because he's going to get stuck in this bad faith. Another example of this can be found in the caste system in India, where many people feel they are destined to have these certain dirty jobs and they can't do much about it because they were destined to have this kind of role. And this, according to Sartre, would be a bad faith. And you can see this idea everywhere, people going on to work and then not really liking it but still doing it because they have this bad faith and all the explanations ready in terms of money, in terms of anything else. And for this reason itself, this particular idea of money and capitalism, Sartre wasn't really a fan of it. In fact, he was a self-professed communist or a Marxist. And he felt that making these certain political changes or changes in the environment, that could affect and it should affect how human beings live in a society. A society where every individual is free and is pursuing and writing their own destiny. So once again, coming back to this idea of existence and how existence precedes essence, according to Sartre, we exist, and that is the first thing. But we don't exist for any particular purpose as in the way with the other objects we see around us. And similarly, nor do we possess any intrinsic nature that will determine how we behave, which means he rejects this deterministic view of the world. He also rejects the idea of God. In fact, this is very much a common theme among existentialist philosophers. Because either God can write your destiny or you can write your destiny. These two views are not really compatible with each other. And that's why he was also an atheist. So that's why he insists on this idea that we don't possess this intrinsic nature that will determine anything about us. We are the free agents. So what purpose we have and how we act, it must be freely chosen by us. And the responsibility to choose is unavoidable. We try to avoid it, we try to shy away from it and live in bad faith, but there is this responsibility, this great burden. So Sartre says that we are, in kind of every moment, we are able to break free from our old habits and all the roles that society has handed to us. So right now, you are able to choose whatever you want to do, whatever you want to define yourself, you want to identify yourself with. You might want to find new goals, might want to do new things, you can do. But it's just that you are stopping yourself by living in bad faith. Of course, some of you would be arguing that we don't really choose a lot of things in our lives. For example, We didn't choose to take birth, and we didn't choose our circumstances into which we were born. I might be born in one kind of family, you might be born in a different kind of family, different atmosphere. Nevertheless, Sartre says, I am free and you are free too to choose how you respond to the given circumstances. Even if somebody is born a slave, they can either choose to agree and obey, or they can choose to disobey and face the consequences. It's always a choice. And it's given to us. This choice, this freedom is available to us all the time. Every moment we have this. But when you think about it, when you live your life this way, when you are being a free agent and making choice consciously every moment, it can be a great burden. It can be a really, really heavy responsibility. But then it's up to us what kind of life we want to live. Do we want to be free, or do we want to regret later? But there's a problem here. All these arguments are based on the idea that we are free. And a lot of people might argue the opposite, that how can you be so sure that you are free? And for example, if human beings are physical objects, then they are governed by the same laws of nature that govern all other physical objects. Similarly, we are biological creatures shaped by the evolution. Then how can we truly be free? We have our own instincts, and even these instincts are biologically determined in many ways. What I'm going to think next, I don't know. Where that thought will come from, I don't know. So, is there really freedom available to us? And that question really gets to the heart of the consciousness, who we are, the idea of being. And that's why I suggest you should read Being and Nothingness, because there Sartre talks about the different layers of being. That is, being for others, how we are in the natural world, and then there is an idea of being for yourself, and then the third layer is being in yourself. That is this idea of nothingness. So these ideas are really interesting and really complicated, and I would want you to read those ideas and decide for yourself how you feel about it. But we can point it out here that Sartre's ideas are based on our subjective awareness, how we see the world, and based on the assumption that we have a consciousness, a conscious moral agent, an agent who is free to make choices, and then based on that assumption, all the philosophy is being crafted here. But it's a really, really interesting idea, and I hope you'll explore yourself. And whether you agree with his ideas of free will or you don't, it's completely up to you, because you're free to make your judgment. Or are you really? Think about that.